Again, thank you. Welcome everyone. This is yet another Black History Conversations, and we're welcoming our guests. I think Associate Professor Anne Heffernan, I'm not sure if I've got your title right, and also Chief Thomas Rebecki, and we're delighted to have you with us. We're also delighted to have Dr. Bunmi-Osan, who's joining us from Canada, and you'll get you to ask some of the questions, Bunmi, in a little while. I know it's very early in the morning for you here. We've also got my colleague Simon Fringo with us, who's a freelance undertaking all kinds of different interesting activities, maybe tell you later. And we've also got Garrick Prayog and June Elizabeth White-Smith Gully from the Windrush Ambassadors Network. So we're a real mixed bunch today. I'm speaking to you from Australia, so I'm just going to start the session as I do normally, hopefully with efficiency this time. And just to say that Linford Sweeney's had to give his apologies. He was going to talk to us about his website, Inspired Histories, and his latest book, but he's going to join us next week. So we've got a little bit more time with our other two guests, as I say, Chief Thomas Rebecki, Bikebi, and Dr. Anne Heffernan. Thank you very much indeed. Now I'm just going to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land where I am in Australia, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, for they held the memories, the traditions and the culture of the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people across the nation. And it's respectful before every session, every meeting, to acknowledge the traditional custodians. If the session is being led by a member of the First Australian peoples, then they will do a welcome to country, which is a different ceremony. So that's great. So I think it would be really nice just to start with you, Anne, to hear a little bit about your story, if that's okay. And then Chief Thomas, we will talk with you, and then maybe Anne, we can come back to you, and then maybe Chief Thomas will come back to you, so that we share the time, and then others can ask questions and other things, if that's okay. So Anne, it's great that you were able to join us, and I understand you're from the University of Durham. So do you want to introduce yourself, and then we can talk about your past projects and current projects and future projects, whatever you want to share with us. That would be beautiful.
Certainly. Thank you so much for inviting me, Liz. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm an assistant professor still at the University of Durham, but hopefully your promotion will transcend up to the university authorities, and that will come to pass. But yes, I am, as you can hear by my accent, I'm an American, now teaching at Durham University in the northeast of England. And I come to Durham via South Africa, where I was based for several years at the University of the Witwatersrand. My work is on South African history, quite recent modern South African history. I look at basically the second half of the 20th century, and some of my research has taken me really right up to the present, up to recent student movements in the 2010s, which sort of began under the banner of Rhodes Must Fall and Fees Must Fall. My work previously has been focused predominantly on student politics, and particularly Black student politics in the anti-apartheid era, and then what happens to some of those groups as South Africa transitioned to become a multi-party democracy out of the autocracy of apartheid. Where those sort of student groups positioned themselves in relation to the government, and then what has happened in the more recent decades since the end of apartheid. I am now kind of at the beginning, the very, very beginning of a brand new research project, which will look at the history of segregating universities in South Africa, and particularly at the history of historically Black universities in the starting in really the 1950s. The oldest historically Black university in South Africa is Fort Hare, and that originates in 1916. So they had their centenary a few years ago. But all of the other ones are creations of the apartheid state as part of the project to extend segregation to the university level. So my new project is going to be looking at kind of the network of those universities, and the people who inhabited them, both the staff and the students, and how they moved between them. I'm particularly interested in curriculum, what the state wanted to teach these students, and also how they used the spaces that universities provided them to often subvert what the state wanted them to do. So yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of who I am, where I am, and what I do. And I'm happy to talk as we go further about the new project, or indeed, if people find it more interesting, to talk about the student politics that I've looked at in previous work as well.
Thank you very much indeed. That's a really great introduction, Anne. And I know that recently you met with Chief Thomas, and hence why we managed to break in on that link and welcome Chief Thomas again. I understand you were telling me that you've been in the Congo for Democratic Republic of the Congo for 2 years, and now you're back in London. So Chief Thomas, just tell us about yourself, and how do you have this great title of chief, and what's your personal background, and then we'll hear a bit more about the works that you're doing and why you were meeting up with Anne.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm Chief Thomas. I'm a traditional chief for a village in the Congo, but now I'm living in the UK. My background, I am undergraduate in human rights advocacy, and I'm an accountant as well. I'm not an historian, but I'm really passionate about the history, because as you might know that those who don't learn about their past, they are condemned to its repetition. That's why I decided one day to try to promote the heritage history link between the Congo and Britain, so that the Congolese community and the host community in the UK can have something that is going to be like a common ground, which is going to help them to come together to try to learn about the history. As you can see, within the African or the Congolese community here in the UK, many people, they don't know about their history. That is a very sad and bad thing in the life of people. Many people in the UK, when they are talking about the Congo, they think about Belgium, or the real history, the beginning of opening up the Congo to the world is Henry Morton Stanley, who is a British citizen. So there is so many questions which up to now doesn't got answer about our, wow. Hello?
Hello? Oh, right, let's just get, the person who's just joined us is Roland, and I've just muted you, Roland. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why as a leader of the community, I try to persuade my people so that we can do that promotion. This is going to help us as the people coming to live in the UK to try to create an environment which is going to help us to create community cohesion and a spirit of togetherness. By spending 2 years in the Congo, I went there really just for that connection between the Congo and Britain. Right now, our organization is working with the National Museum in the Congo, and one institution which is called Académie des Beaux-Arts as well, so that we can try to promote promote that connection, not just in the UK, in the Congo as well. Last year, we supposed to celebrate one of the hidden remembrance about the connection between the Congo and Britain, to celebrate the first victory of the Allies, which was won by the Congolese army under the command of Britain to liberate Ethiopia during the First World War, which was the 3rd of July, 1941. So we are working on that project in the Congo with the National Museum so that we can celebrate that remembrance, which is up to now never been celebrated. The first victory of the Allies, which helped the Emperor of Ethiopia, Emperor Haile Selassie, who was in exile here in London, to go back to Ethiopia. So the liberation of Ethiopia was done by the Congolese army on the 3rd of July, 41, with the command of Britain soldiers. That is another part of the forgotten history.
Chief Thomas, can I just interrupt you? That's absolutely fascinating. We've not talked about, on Black History Conversations, we've not talked about Ethiopia, which is perhaps remiss of us, or the importance of Haile Selassie. Sorry. So what you're saying is that the National Museum in the Congo is, sorry, I'm just trying to mute Roland. The National Museum in the Congo is celebrating the anniversary of the Ethiopian achievements against the Italians, right?
That was the Congolese achievement.
The Congolese achievement. So what were the Congolese doing?
The Congolese army went to liberate Ethiopia.
Oh, right.
Under the British command.
Right, how interesting.
It's the Congolese army which liberated Ethiopia. That was on the 3rd of July, 1941.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the National Museum of the Congo were the first to celebrate that.
No, we supposed to celebrate it last year because we who brought that history to the Congo.
Yeah.
And I contacted the National Museum so that we can work in partnership.
That's absolutely fabulous. It would be really good to maybe get somebody from the museum to come and talk with us as well.
Yes.
We sometimes have difficulties with our link to the Congo because of the language issues.
As you might know that in the Congo Institute, there were the Ethiopian students down there as well.
Oh, right.
Yes, they are the one who created the first Black African movement for race, I think, to promote the African race in Colwyn Bay. There were a group of Ethiopian students studying in Colwyn Bay. I'm going to...
So you're referring here, Chief Thomas, to the African Institute in Colwyn Bay in North Wales, which people don't know about is a remarkable story. The Reverend William Hughes had been a missionary in the Congo, but he decided that he would best set up an institute in Colwyn Bay. It's called the Congo Institute to start with, and Congo House. The interference, I think, is coming through your system, Chief Thomas, but never mind, we'll persevere on.
Okay.
And what Chief Thomas was talking with us earlier and saying that it wasn't just Congolese students that studied in North Wales, it was a range of other Africans and a Jamaican and somebody from the US, and it became quite an important place for dialogue across nations. We had a speaker called Robert, I've forgotten his other name, who's just written a book about it, but I don't think it might be published now, but I certainly haven't seen a copy of it. So it'll be really interesting, and he's explored some of the stories of the students, so you'll be interested by that, Chief Thomas. Okay, so carrying on with your story then.
Yes.
This is the work you've been doing.
Now, coming back to the UK, we got the project that we are doing in partnership with Congolese Children Association, which is going to be the lead organization. My organization is called Global Connection International. And the project that we are trying to put in place right now is the hidden history of one of the Congolese soldiers who fought the First World War here in Britain. He died on the 28th of January, 1918 in Beckley, Durham, Newcastle. He was buried there. So Jacques Mundo, there is so many unanswered questions around his life, which is really we want to reveal and try to work on it and to promote that history. What we know, on 19 and 14, he was shot. We don't know where. Was it here in London or where? But he was admitted at the New Cross, Charing Cross Hospital on 1914. And after that, he was declared disabled. So he wasn't fit to fight against the war. So they sent him to Beckley, where was the factory where the Belgian soldier, more than 6,000 was living on that area, working on that factory, which was manufacturing munitions for the First World War. But after that, he went back to the hospital. We don't know why he went back to the hospital, and he didn't come out again, and he died. Was it an accident during his work in the factory, or he was sick? Or all those questions is going to be our work during the research that we are going to do for the project that we are trying to do with, maybe it's going to be with Durham University as well, as is one of our contacts. And we got a contact with Charing Cross Hospital so that we can look at the archive to know about the life of how many times Corporal Mbondo spent in that hospital, as well as Imperial War Museum, which I'm going to meet up with them next Monday. So that is the work that we are doing with the Congolese Children Association. So the main objective of this is to announce the strategic support in connecting and helping African Congolese and British living in the UK and in the Congo to explore and share the potential heritage link and diverse tradition and culture between these two countries. But we know for sure the history of the Congo here in Britain. There is so many countries coming along and around that history, as I said, about Congo Institute. So many students, they came from Ivory Coast, from Cameroon, from Sierra Leone, from Nigeria, all around Africa to study in the Congo Institute, and the Ethiopian students as well. So what we really want to do to create a safer cultural and linguistically environment to highlight that positive missing chapter history between the Congo and Britain. When I'm saying linguistically environment, we, the Congolese people, English is not our first language. that is one of the barriers stopping the Congolese community in war to be engaged with their heritage and, participate to the world, the wider community activity. We want to bring the two communities so that they can share that history and to learn the civic duty and responsibility that we have. Because right now we have quite a big number of the Congolese community who are British citizens now. And if you see the number of children from the Congo region who are born here, who can say that they are the lost community as they don't know about their history. During my time in Durham, I went to Durham University before I can meet Professor Ann at the cathedral. I was asking people questions about Caporal Jacques Monod. Even one person could respond to that. A simple question I was asking them, do you know one Congolese soldier who died in 1914, buried in Bentley? No. So many people don't know about it. Since we started the survey up to now, I never meet a person, even the Congolese people, even the host community, to respond to that question.
That's fantastic. I'm just going to ask Chief Thomas now, if Anne, you come back in again and tell us then about how you may be able to help and what the possibilities are, and perhaps a little bit more about that story.
Sure. Sorry.
No, say it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I can tell you a little bit about what Chief Thomas and I discussed thus far. As I mentioned, this is not my area of research expertise, but luckily there are a number of people in the department who are working on much more local history than I do. And we also have particularly an interest in public history. So in this kind of public-facing historical outputs, which Chief Thomas has already been so involved in other subjects, as with the Congolese School in North Wales. And so the idea here, I think, is to try to basically facilitate links with local historians, particularly local historians of Black history in the Northeast, who may be able to help find archives that will help illuminate some of what was going on in Berkeley during this period of the First World War. I think, Chief Thomas, hearing you speak, one thing that struck me as potentially a really interesting question as your research goes forward is how unique is Corporal Mongo, because like the life history that you gave me in a kind of snapshot in Durham Cathedral is fascinating. I mean, this is a man with tremendous kind of international and transnational links. He's got, you said, a Russian wife in France. This is during the period of the Russian Revolution. He is injured potentially in the UK. We don't know. He winds up in Berkeley, of all places. I don't know if anybody's been to Berkeley, but it is not a major metropolis, I think it's fair to say. And it would be really interesting to know how much of his story is just so unique to him, how many of those other soldiers working in the munitions factory might have come from Congo or elsewhere on the continent. And I don't know the answer to any of those, but I really look forward to hearing what your research finds as you go forward.
Thank you very much indeed. That's really helpful, and it helps us to get the clearer picture. Just at this moment then, let's see if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask for clarification. So we've heard about Corporal Mongo and the work that you're doing with the Congolese Children's Association. So you're really working with young people, aren't you, to try and help them to understand their history and to feel that, you know, as British citizens, they're a part of Britain, because our histories are linked, and that's an incredible opportunity. I don't know if anybody else wants to ask anything. We've got Dr. Bunmi Oysen from Oh, Garrick, you've raised your hand. Wonderful.
Yes, I had to jump to the door quickly. Somebody just delivered a parcel. So yes, just listening to what Chief Thomas was saying, there's a number of things that has come out of this conversation. You know, we talk about Black history. You know, Black history, as we said this morning, Liz, it is so diverse in its content. And there's another branch that we haven't really talked about is military history, because the military history is a complete different history. It brings in, you know, Commonwealth people, soldiers, like the First World War, for example, Second World War. You know, it brings all that together. And so, you know, as I said to you this morning, Liz, you know, Black studies is quite different from Black history, because with Black studies, we sort of widen, you know, the scope, and we bring in a much broader, you know, international content. And what Chief has just said, you know, many people wouldn't particularly know about this, because it's not the sort of thing that just come in the ordinary Black history conversation, unless we're focusing on a particular country and a particular period. Then we can pick up some of those timeline. And it is true that many Congolese, in the same as many Jamaican, do not know their history. You know, we know little bits of our history, but we don't know, you know, the history. And when you try to have a conversation, and I do this quite often, particularly with people from Africa, you know, that is born in the UK, the second, third, fourth generation. When I have a conversation with them, I always try to establish their roots, you know, their fathers and grandfathers. You know, do they know who their grandparents and where did their grandparents come from? And often the case that they don't know, because they don't have that intergeneration conversation. And, you know, that is typical of, you know, we have in Liverpool, we have Nigeria Association, we have Ghana Association, we have Congolese Association, we have Caribbean Association, we have all these different associations, Kenya, etc. And when you have those conversations with the generation that is born here, they are quite ignorant about their history. And, you know, I think this is so important when you bring this stuff alive, you know, this particular piece of research that you're trying to establish. When you bring this alive and, you know, and get it out to the wider community, because we must not think about Black history is just for Black people, because history is history. It's for everybody. You know, and that is the conversation we need to have, that any history, you know, we need to engage with a very wide audience, because otherwise it is of no benefit to us.
No, that's fascinating. Thanks very much indeed, Garrick. That's really great. We have a colleague who joins us every now and again called Martin Pinder. And Martin, very kindly, it was through Martin's email that I got to hear about what's going on. It was through Martin's email that I put two and two together and invited you both along to this session today. So just to summarize, because this is such a fascinating story, and I really need it to sink in. So it's Corporal Jacques Bondo, not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, as a Congolese origin soldier fighting for Belgium in World War I. Now, Chief Thomas, you must tell me if any of this is inaccurate, who was injured fighting on the Western Front and then hospitalised in England. And you mentioned that he was at Charing Cross Hospital. After recovering, he then joined a group of several thousand Belgian refugees who escaped the German invasion, who were assembled together in northeast England to staff an armaments factory making munitions in Birtley near Gateshead in County Durham for the British war effort across the water on the Western Front. So Corporal Jacques Bondo stayed in Birtley after World War I and is buried in the cemetery in Birtley, which Chief Thomas, you visited. Did you go to the, well, I'll ask you afterwards. You're due to be visiting the cemetery to explore launching your community project commemorating this history, not least to promote mutual understanding, knowledge and integration with and between local people in general and Congolese in northeast England in particular. And Chief Thomas has also intended to visit the Imperial War Museum in London to host a mobile exhibition illustrating this World War I story and the Congolese Corporal Jacques Bondo in particular. So I'm grateful to Martin for sharing that with me. And I hope that everybody's a bit clearer now and we can name names and recognize Corporal Bondo. Fantastic story. So Chief Thomas, there was something I was going to ask you there and I've forgotten it. Just a minute, let me just find my slide again. Yes, did you manage to go to the cemetery to see his grave?
Yes. That was the Saturday before the day that I met Professor Anne. So Saturday, I went to that the cemetery. I was the first Congolese to go to that place. And I brought with me 2 people coming from Darlington, because where I stopped before I can go to that place. And after that, I went to meet up the Congolese community based in Newcastle. And from there, they received the message because I was really not sure if that place existed. So I went there myself on Saturday, the 21st of January. Then after that, on Monday, I met Professor Anne at the cathedral.
All right, thank you very much for clarifying that. I'm going to come back to cemeteries in a moment because we met in another cemetery and I think that would be lovely to talk about as well, Chief Thomas. But Garrett, you've got a point to raise.
Yeah, just a small point. It might be useful. A few years ago, David Lammy did a documentary on untold heroes, and it was specifically around the black soldiers that have been killed in various war, and no grave. There was no, there was nowhere they could find their burial place, and certain places were just covered over with field, and it was almost lost. And Channel 4 did the research. I'm just wondering whether a conversation could take place, because for that program, they must have done a lot of research in that program, whether or not there's any evidence of soldiers from the Congolese, for example, where they were buried and unmarked graves somewhere. But yes, it was narrated by David Lammy.
That's really interesting. I'm just looking back. Do you remember what year it was that you went to Colwyn Bay, Chief Thomas?
In 2006.
2017, was it?
No, 16.
2016, right. Okay, well, we'll see if we can in between whiles, I'll see if I can find the photographs that would illustrate this. If not, I promise I'll share them again. I last met Chief Thomas in Colwyn Bay, and several of the students at the Congo Institute, which later became the African Institute, passed away sadly while they were there, and their graves are in Old Colwyn. And those graves had never been visited by anybody from the Congolese community. As you said, that this grave had never been visited. And so you came and blessed the cemetery, I remember it clearly. And we went to look for the graves and we found them, but it was distressing because they were quite weathered, that's the term.
Yes.
So you arranged for the Congolese embassy, I think, to fund the restoration of those graves,
Yes.
and then we had a ceremony to rededicate them, and it was one of the most interesting days of my life, I think, when we welcomed 2 coachloads of people of Congolese heritage, including Chief Thomas.
Yeah.
And the chef and the food, and we assembled with the mayor, sadly passed, that mayor of Colwyn Bay. Yes, it was a little while ago, and we walked to the ceremony, we paraded, and the coach arrived with the band, so we had a band playing. And we had tokens to put on all the graves, and even the graves of others connected with the African Institute who weren't Congolese, like Reverend William, my brain's gone here, William Hughes. And yeah, it was just the most moving time. And then we all marched back down the road again. Never seen anything like it in Colwyn Bay. Colwyn Bay is a smallish seaside resort in North Wales, and we had the greatest party with the most wonderful food that was prepared by your Congolese chef colleague. It was just the greatest day, wasn't it? And all respect to Norbert, who has done so much to keep me informed and keep in touch and to research that story of the African Institute in Colwyn Bay. So that's a very interesting aspect of what Welsh Black history is, the story of the African Institute in Colwyn Bay. So that then brings me to ask you, Anne, if that's all right. But just before that, Anne, Chief Thomas, do you have any other memories of that day?
Yes, I still have the memory. What is really sad, we're supposed to keep that momentum so that issue can be celebrated every year.
Yeah.
That one up to now, there is not any other event. That is really sad. That's why we decided, as we are going, we declared this year as the African and Congolese roots and legacy. So all the connection event that we are going to do, we cannot just do a one-off. We need to keep it alive. That's what we are planning to do. I think Martin Pinder is trying to contact cancer with it, so that if the Dembi Festival, I don't know if it's going to be organized this year, we really want to include the Congolese community as well to participate to that thing. And we are going to, in Colwyn Bay, if they can organize things like that, because last time, because of the pandemic, they didn't do it. But I don't know if now it's going to be open.
Right. Well, we've got good links. I'm coming back to the UK in in May, I think. So we'll have to do something while I'm still there. And then I'm going to give you a real treat in a minute till you see this. But just to tell you that I'm in touch with Gwyneth Kensler, who's contributed to Black History Conversations. And there was a big debate about Henry Morton Stanley's statue. So we had a whole session on that. But we're also working with others in Denbigh with a link with Jamaica, because there's a Denbigh plantation in Jamaica. And so we're linking there. So that'll all come round. So keep me in the loop, please. Now, drum roll. What about this then?
Oh, yes.
Isn't that amazing? That's the entrance of the cemetery. Now, I apologise, I haven't edited these. These are just the raw footage photographs.
Yes.
See that some of the memorials, the headstones were quite weathered.
Wow. Wow.
The one we went to, this is the headstone of Reverend William Hughes and his family. Here we examine them. Here's Norbert.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the pre-visit. I might find the other pictures in a minute, as I've been clever enough to find these. So this was more explanations. And oh, there you are. You see, got your posh hat on.
Yeah. Wow.
Look at this. Then we went. Where did we go then? Where are these? Bangor University.
No.
No, it's a museum.
I forgot the name of that place.
Llandudno Museum.
Llandudno, yes. Llandudno
Yeah.
Museum. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, here we are outside. Oh, sorry. It was the Conway Archives, which is the Llandudno Museum. They've now got a new museum, you know, that they're developing. So we need to go along and have a look there.
Okay.
Oh, and this is some of Norbert's work that he was exploring to try and, you know, keep all the records of where there's Congolese history in.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go back a moment and tell you something, Chief Thomas. The Conway Archives was very supportive of us because they've got the archive of the African Institute. And I asked them for some documentation, and they sent me some links and documentation. And included in it was actually a letter from my father, which I knew nothing about, to the archives, because he was researching the story of the African Institute, and I never knew. It was really uncanny. So, little thing from me there to say the family history. Oh, and look, here's a wallaby in Australia. I told you. So while you're talking about things, I'll be looking up to see if I can find the next slide. It was really lovely to remember that day. It would be really so great. Right, and I think we'll just now ask you to tell us about one of your stories and things. And I'm really interested because Davison Jabavu was a student at the African Institute, and we've actually got an autograph book with Davison Jabavu's entry in the autograph book. So that's interesting. That's the lady in Cheshire's got that. Maybe, Garrick, I might persuade you to go and have a chat with her and have a look, because the family really aren't quite sure what to do having the ownership of this wonderful autograph book. So Davison Jabavu, how much do you know about him, Anne? Can you tell us a little bit, and how Fort Hare University managed to be established? I think he was one of the first people.
I can tell you very little about Jabavu, I'm afraid. It's like half a century before my period, but I'll have a go.
Okay.
Yeah, I wonder if it makes more. I'll maybe say a couple of things, but for me to talk about sort of student politics in South Africa in the second half of the 20th century probably doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of our conversation. It'll just be a diversion. So maybe I'll say just a couple of things about Fort Hare in that earlier period, which does map very much on this timeline. And then also I'd like to kind of go back to Garrick's earlier point about the position of Black history in sort of broad collective knowledge and how we teach it, how we engage with it, because I think it's a really important and interesting point.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. That's great.
That's all right.
Yeah,
I'll have a go. So Fort Hare, as I mentioned earlier, is the oldest historically Black university in South Africa, and it's quite unique because, as I said, all of the other ones are basically projects of the apartheid state, and they are set up with the intent of, effectively with the intent of excluding Black Africans from higher education in what we might think of as historically white institutions. So the University of Cape Town, the University of the Witwatersrand, which had, within the kind of context of segregation before apartheid, some limited degree to admit Black students. So Nelson Mandela, for instance, does his law degree at the University of the Witwatersrand after he is an undergraduate student at Fort Hare. But Fort Hare is set up by, I believe, Wesleyan Methodist missionaries, certainly in 1916. And it comes out of this much more affirmative educational tradition for Black South Africans. South Africa has a long and rich, as many African countries did, a long and rich tradition of mission schooling. And we can see a lot of African nationalists coming out of that tradition. Mandela, but a whole cohort of early African nationalists in South Africa in, for instance, 1914, because it's just before war is declared. A cohort of the early leaders of the ANC, the African National Congress, come to London to lobby the king and the parliament to try to overturn a law that's enforcing land segregation. And of those people, I think all 5 of them are mission educated. So Saul Plaatje is certainly mission educated. John Dube is mission educated and then goes on to become a reverend and headmaster at a mission school in KwaZulu-Natal. So there's this deep, rich tradition of religious education in South Africa. Fort Hare comes out of that and really becomes the kind of a preeminent place to be educated, not just as a African in South Africa, but for people from other parts of the continent as well. It educates Kenneth Kaunda, I believe, goes to Fort Hare. Robert Mugabe goes to Fort Hare. So a whole range of very, very prominent African national leaders are educated at Fort Hare, and it has this tremendous tradition. As I mentioned, it still exists as still a very prominent university in South Africa, celebrated its centenary in 2016. So it's 107 years old now. It occupies an interesting position because it has that sort of deep, deep storied history. But in that period that I talked about, when the apartheid state is interested in trying to segregate and basically really control higher education for Black South Africans, it takes over Fort Hare. So Fort Hare goes from being a kind of autonomous, self-governing institution like other universities are, to being under the thumb, for lack of a better word, of the Department of Education in Pretoria, and particularly what's called the Department of Bantu Education. So a separate curriculum, separate funding structures, segregation at really every level of education. And that, I think, in many ways damages both the reputation and the resources, particularly the resources. When I speak about historically Black universities in South Africa, all of these were, perhaps unsurprisingly, chronically underfunded during the apartheid years. And so it's got this very interesting, incredibly important history. And then in some ways, its present is very informed by that more recent history of underfunding and being sort of an institution that was increasingly marginalized in the academic landscape of South Africa. So I'll maybe leave Fort Hare there for just a minute. We can come back to it if we like. I'm happy to talk more about it. But I did want to pick up on Garrick's point, which I just thought it really struck me as incredibly important, particularly because February is Black History Month in the United States, which is sort of terrible that they picked the shortest month of the entire calendar year. I think Britain does it much better with October, which is a full 31 days. But in any case, it is Black History Month right now in my country of origin. And I was reading an article today in the New York Times, and the headline of it was, "You can't have American history without Black history." And I just thought that was such an incredibly kind of powerful, eye-catching thing, because it gets to the heart of this issue that so often we kind of hive Black history off because it's been generally excluded from history. And I think this is a big part of why we have communities that feel distant from their history or removed. And probably there's quite a lot, I don't know if June Elizabeth wants to come in, but quite a lot to do with the history of emotion and disaffection in this story. But it's, I think, increasingly just really incumbent upon us to try to push Black history back into that, not to have a separate Black history, that Black history is British history, Black history is American history. In the context that I'm working on in South Africa, in some ways that's an easier sort of road to hoe because it's much more kind of integrated, certainly in the political project in South Africa now. But just to say that I thought that was a compelling point, Garrick, and I wanted to pick up on it.
Thank you. Right. So Bunmi's got a question or point to raise. Bunmi?
Yeah. Hi, good morning, everybody. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes.
Great
Yeah,
that you're with us, Bunmi. Thank you.
Just to say, I find the work you're doing and really interesting. And I mean, talking about missionary education and activism towards independence. In West Africa, its counterpart would be Forabe College, which probably even precedes it, which served as a launching pad for nationalists from all across West Africa. It was where a lot of them were educated, and then a lot of them turned out to be the people who agitated for independence for their various countries and so on. So I think I'd love to read more about because not a lot, like you said, has been done to kind of mark that the role that the historically Black schools in South Africa have played, and also to kind of re-emphasize what Garrick said about the role of history and Black history. Like you said, I would actually go so far as to say you cannot have world history without Black history. It's not just American history. African history is world history. It is where the first civilizations, first humans evolved. It is where earlier civilizations evolved. A lot of the development in various parts of the world have been built on the back of Africa. And so there's no world history without Black history. And and which also brings me to not so much a concern, but maybe a question that I'd like to ask about from the chief, and the celebration of this of the role of the relationship between Congo and the British, especially when you to ask how critical are those unearthing and celebrations of those histories are of the role of people like Stanley, the role that he played in opening up the Congo for Belgium. And I'm even also wondering, this soldier that is being celebrated, I noticed from the slides that Liz put up that he was a Belgian soldier who fought on the side of the West. And I'm wondering to what extent his participation as a soldier was voluntary and not some kind of conscription, given, you know, the role that Belgium and other Europeans were playing, not just in Congo, but what has now developed to be Democratic Republic of Congo and so on. So that in unearthing these histories, in celebrating this man as an individual, I think those connections should be made because the repercussions are still there in those countries today.
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much indeed, Henry. That's great. Do you want to respond to that, Chief Thomas? I can't hear you.
Oh, thank you. I mute my phone. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Barney. You know, starting from Henry Morton Stanley, there is so many history which was really negative about him. And now we know some of the truth which is not really discerned for what has been talked about him for, I can say, centuries. When you see the biography of Tim Gill, there is so many things that we can explore. And that man, which opened up the Congo, not for Belgium, for the world. Because when he went to the Congo for the first time, he went there to look for Dr. Livingstone. He went for the first time, not for King Leopold II. No, this happened after, as King Leopold II was looking for the country to colonize. Then he tried to pursue Stanley, who went to the Congo. So the first mission of Henry Morton Stanley to the Congo wasn't with King Leopold II. Was the mission which he started in America.
Actually not new history, it's not new knowledge that he went there to look for Livingstone. Yeah. And but the thing is, the work he did for Leopold of Belgium, you know, the repercussions of those are still in that country now. Yes, so he went to look for Livingstone. Big deal, you know. You can't take one without the other. Yes. And this is what I'm saying. One of the things that I think Garrick and also Anne points out, history, there are different ways and reasons and motives behind doing history, you know, and those motives should be made clear, you know. So this celebration, which is beginning to look to me like some kind of revisionist way of studying or of projecting Stanley, it's I find it worrying. I find it really, really worrying.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thomas, Chief Thomas?
Yes, I think when you see the worry of the people, which is really taking people to bury some of part of the history. Now, you know, history is history, something really important for people's life. So we cannot live in the past, but we must take the past as a place of reference, not a place of residence. so that we can go there to try to learn every single things which happened in the past, even the sad, the negative or the positive things, and try to put it on table so that we can build the present. We cannot build the present without referring to the past. So that's why we really want to unveil that history so everyone can know what happened during Stanley time. Because we got in the Congo, the people who were the friend of Stanley, who in the family up to now, they have the name of Harry Morton Stanley in this family. So that connections have so many positive and negative as well, but we need to learn it. And another thing that you mentioned about Caporal Mondo, yes, of course we really want to know. He came, is really many things that is missing to his history. When was it in Britain? Because we can see there is other research I did. He got a Russian wife. He was living in Belgium. He was living in France and in here. So was it a voluntary or those Congolese soldiers who came to Belgium to fight during the First World War? So we really want to dig down of that so that we can know. As we know, I know the research that I'm doing right now, there is 100 graves of the Congolese soldier who fought during the First World War in Belgium. So we want to know, in Britain, was it the only one Congolese who came here? Because we know that so many soldiers, they ran away when Belgium was under the German control. So was it the only one Congolese who came here? Now I think the research that we are going to do to explore that part of heritage history is going to reveal us so many things. And Gary that said that when people are talking about Black history, we are missing about talking about the military side. It's really important because those people, they sacrifice their life. When we see our younger generation, what are really called the lost generation, sometimes they don't feel part of the British society. But those kind of the heritage, when we are talking about it, oh, we are going to say one day, wow, our ancestors, they came to fight here. Even one person is one to too many who was part of this war. On that time, where although he was declared disabled, but he was working at that factory. And they say that the work on that munition factory was really hard. They were working for the long hours. That is a real sacrifice they did. And with that ammunition, how the army could have fight. So he played a very big role. So the Black African community in England and war in the UK should celebrate and be proud of their ancestors' contribution.
I'm saying, what I would say is that we don't know yet whether it is something that should be celebrated. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of, there were Black soldiers who were forced into fighting in the American war on the side of the Confederates. You know, they were forced into those wars. So to now say one is now looking at their history without actually knowing the situations under, I mean, a lot of them were forced to go with the people who owned them as slaves, you know, into war to fight against the Union side that was trying to free them. So military history is really, really important. More time needs to be dedicated to it so that we know the actual nature of the involvement of, these various Black soldiers in those various wars.
Yes, thank you again, Bunmi, and we respect very much your views, because you founded and still are running the Sankofa Black History series. That's the right name, isn't it? And that's really important. I'm going to now go. Is it okay if I go to Garrick next and then you, Alan? Is that all right? Thank you. Thanks, Bunmi.
Couple of points. Just picking up on the point that Anne has made and what I've been saying in relation to history. And it is the case that when you market Black history to the wider population, it becomes very much marginalized in that way, and a lot of people just are not interested. If you market Black history within British history or global history, it's a different conversation to be had. But also, particularly from the American, and because you're from the States, and this afternoon I'll be in conversation with my colleagues from USA. Black history in America very much focus on, as it says on the tin, Black history. But we often don't talk about Native American history in the same breath. You tend to separate that and say, okay, that's another history. And we need to find a way as academic and tutors, find a way when we're having conversation about Black history to pull these things together, because and it's a similar issue with Asian history, and you cannot really have the same conversation, Black history, which is predominantly of African roots, and say, oh, the Asian history. So there is that separation. See? And the key to all of this really is how you market these conversations in terms of Black history. And I said to Liz a couple of months back during October, I was running a weekly Black history workshop, but I didn't market it in that way. It was just world history. When people came in, I started to pick up the different aspect about the world history. So we have to be conscious that when we refer to Black, and sometimes we want to say global Black, but in reality we can't do that. We have to acknowledge all the other bits. So I guess we could think of a tree, the root, and then all the branches that comes out of that, and then we need to then address all those branches and bring those conversation together.
Thank you, Garrick. That's profound. Right, Anne, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That is profound, and I think a really helpful way to think about what we're doing, and maybe to think possibly, I guess, laterally about the different ways we can do it. Because as you were speaking, Garrick, I found myself thinking about the ways that I think you're exactly right about the kind of hiving off of, in this case, Indigenous American history from Black history. They have a different month, right? Like Black history happens in February, Native American history happens in November. These are how things are very much siloed. But I think one of the spaces that can really transcend some of these divisions is art and literature. I don't know if anybody read the book, The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanon Jeffers. It's phenomenal. And it was, as you were speaking, I thought that just brought together the history of the Cree in Georgia with the history of early enslaved Black Americans just so beautifully, in a way that, as a historian, I just admired the skill of the novelist to bring that kind of artistic rendering of real history in a way that's much more elegant than certainly I have ever achieved. So I would recommend that to anybody who's interested in the history of the American South, but particularly in trying to integrate some of those too often marginalized histories. And that kind of also helps me bridge to the point that I was originally thinking of making in relation to the conversation between Bunmi and Chief Thomas, which is very much about the challenge of sources for historians, right? How do we reclaim lost voices? And so often, if we're doing Black history, those voices are not actively preserved in the historical record in the way that the voices of white people, particularly like very prominent white men who owned property, like get recorded in all sorts of ways. And often the people that we're trying to look for are more attenuated from our view. How do we begin to understand exactly what's happening with somebody like Corporal Mbongo? And I think there are just real challenges there. I think Bunmi is absolutely right about the coercive possibilities of being an African soldier in either of the world wars. We have other examples of this. And so it's a real challenge for historians as we try to go back and recapture that history to make sure that we get a full picture of what's happening, insofar as our sources allow. And the further obviously away we get from history happening, the harder that challenge is. I do oral history in my own work because I happen to work on it periods when some people are still around to talk about it. But it's just to say, I think it's an important and sort of pressing intervention, and one that sort of prompts me to think about the sources that we work with and what voices they allow us to capture, and how we can try to find those voices, bring together a set of sources to find those voices. And I'm going to cut myself off. I'm going to have to leave in 1 minute to go to another Zoom call. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your comments, your contribution, and thank you for bringing whatever it was that, well, I've heard about what you were doing together with Chief Thomas, so it's really wonderful, and thank you very, very much indeed. And I hope you'll stay in touch with us. And just to let you know that Dr. Bunmi Hamilton was, I think, can't remember if I said earlier, is the founder of the Sankofa Black History series, and she's done some absolutely fantastic work interviewing people. So I'm sure she's got a few more people after today to put on your list, Bunmi, to interview. Thank you very much indeed, Anne. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to, if it's all right, just do a bit of a treat again. Says she, find the photographs. All right, so here we are. I don't remember it being this gloomy, but it doesn't look like it was a very good day, but I do recall it being wet. So there we are, we're waiting for the rest of the Congolese crew. We actually made a start too soon up the street, but anyway, that was good, wasn't it? We got there, if you remember.
I do remember.
And there we were, look. Here's the band at the front.
Can you send me all those pictures, please?
Yes, I think I haven't seen them for ages, but there was a film that was done, but I've just looked to see if I could find the film and I can't find it. So here we are walking up the street.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't show here, and I haven't got a record in my photographs, and I don't know why, because I photograph everything. But this was the after party, and we were in the place afterwards. Here you are speaking, Chief Thomas.
Very
Important moments in life.
Wow.
And here, do you remember this must have been part of a display that you
Yeah,
was
yeah,
brought, Wales and the Congo? And there's also, must be, oh, here are some a bit more interesting photos.
yeah.
Can't, I don't know if I can make my screen any smaller. Yes, there it is. This is me here, folks.
I can see you.
This is Norbert. Here you are, Chief Thomas.
Yeah.
Yes. Here's the mayor. Here's the band just got off the coach, and everybody's got flags, and oh, it's just wonderful. And then, oh, that's the same photograph, isn't it? Sorry about that. It's okay then. So I think that's it then. All right, I won't share the rest of it because I keep photographing off various sources. But I can't think there was anything else that I can see there, unless this was just this. Oh yes, there again. This is in Colwyn Bay Town Hall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not come across any pictures of. I do apologise. I'll stop sharing and turn this one round because it's an interesting photograph. Anyway, I'll certainly send them to you.
Please, thank you.
Let me just, yeah. Oops, Daisy. All right, I'm just trying to turn that one round. That's all right. Let's turn it once. Yeah, I'll show this one as the last one, and then I'll check them through. Just a minute. I'm just going to show you. Okay. Thanks very much for all your patience. This is just a lovely opportunity. Chief Thomas, we can have a conversation on Zoom sometime, and I can share these pictures with you and we can talk it back through. It'd be quite interesting to record an interview, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Don't know what stories you were telling there, but you look as if you're having a good time. And then more sideways pictures. Oh, do you remember Mary Sennett? She was a lovely, lovely colleague. She's here are some of the others. We had a real good crowd there, didn't we? Photographing everybody.
She's grown up now.
But it shows how the community were involved and engaged. It wasn't just the mayor, it was a lot of other people as well. We were quite anxious, I remember, with that celebration as to how it would turn out. Anyway, Chief Thomas, is there anything else that you want to tell us just at the moment to wrap up? If not, we'll just have a look at some of the things that are going on the PowerPoint.
So I want to just ask Dr. Bami, is it from Ghana?
Dr. Bunmi is from Nigeria.
Nigeria.
She's a well-known author as well in Nigeria. She's just left a message saying she's sorry she's had to leave, but yes, that was fabulous.
Well, another thing that I want to just ask you, do you have any news about Jane William, the great-granddaughter of William Hughes? Jane William.
I see her photographs from time to time when she's on holiday on my Facebook. But I could put you in touch with her if you'd like.
Okay. I really want to be in touch with her. I tried to send her an email, but up to now, I didn't get any answer from her.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I'll follow that up and we'll see if we can get that contact. Yeah, lovely, lovely. Okay, I'll just check I've got the right PowerPoint up, so it's always a good start, and then I'll share the screen. Well, thank you so much, Chief Thomas. It's just been really good to have you join us again, and we hope you'll come back and tell us how you're getting on with the project, please, because I think we need to follow these stories through, because it is about community researchers. Okay, so just a bit of an update on a few other things. Okay.
Yeah.
So Simon did a count up for Belong's annual report. Now, this only went back to March 2022, Simon. So is there even more figures than this?
There are. I think these are particularly high because we were still in the latter stages of lockdown.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of our recent ones have gone quite so high.
No.
But it does tell us what I thought was very interesting is it does tell us we can reach people.
Yeah.
So we have to keep thinking about how we do it. I know I keep mentioning we need to try broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube, some of these sessions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it was just so nice to know that we got a lot of views, and some sessions were just, you know, like Maggie's okra session. I thought that was great. But some of the more, some of the serious discussions also got a lot of viewings.
Yeah. And Maggie's session on making gumbo with okra was just fascinating, wasn't it? I've asked her if she'll come back and do another recipe for us.
Well, I still think we need to do something on saltfish, salt cod.
Oh, yes.
Because it links so many stories from Black history, from other histories, and food cultures, because you find saltfish recipes, West Africa, Brazil, Caribbean, Italy, Portugal, Spain.
Yeah, right. That's certainly something we can follow up. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I just wanted to talk about was last week. Avril joined us from her walk and talks in London, which is absolutely fascinating. And the book that she's produced is really interesting as well. And the reason that I chose this one is it's a poignant statue in Map Roach Park on the corner of the Brixton Road and St John's Crescent. And it was commissioned in '98. Hang on a minute, I'm just going to, oops, not working. Chief Thomas, can you switch your mic on, please? It was commissioned in '98 and created in a memorial to the 116 children who were killed in South Africa's 1976 Soweto uprising. So the sculpture was unveiled by Happy Mangula, Deputy Commissioner for South Africa, and depicts a well-known photograph from the uprising captured by Sam Nzimba Zimmer, showing Mabusia Makubu carrying a body of 12-year-old Hector Peterson in his arms. I apologize for my pronunciation. I think it's really important, though, that we remember names. And so there's all sorts of included in Avril's book. So she's not only got a book on Black London, history, art and culture in over 120 places, but she's also got a Black history map produced. So it was really interesting, and she joined us last week. Also, Ankara Thomas joined us. I think I said earlier, her book's now translated into English as Woven, but originally published as Y Castell Sigur in Welsh, Castell Sigur. My Welsh pronunciation's as bad as well. So it was wonderful and we're looking forward to people getting copies of this and getting some more reviews on it. So that was great. Just to say that John Samuel Mifakela John Samuels joined us from time to time to share some of his exceptional work, his exceptional painting, and he's now got an exhibition response to Outlines of the Globe by Thomas Pennant, who was one of the explorers, if you like, of North Wales. It was a time when it became popular to look at what was going on around in Britain, never mind about overseas. So Thomas Pennant was one of the authors of different guides. So that's something to look forward to. Unfortunately, I won't be over there in time to see it, but perhaps later. Just to remind ourselves as well about the Black Curriculum, just a brilliant organisation that's put together so much information, and they've got 3 new books. I'm not sure how long those have been out. So this session now is just a bit of a catch up for 5 minutes on things that I've found over the last while. This is interesting because we talked about blue plaques at some stage, and it's important that we recognise not only Black history but Asian history. And so that's plaque in Hampton Court. I think that came out of Avril's work. Now we're going to welcome Eleanor Shearer because she's the granddaughter of Windrush generation immigrants, it says here. Splits the time between London and Ramsgate, right? So she's going to come and talk with us and tell us about her book on Friday the 3rd of March, River Sing Me Home. And then I thought we could include that also, include her also in the Windrush series that we're going to do in the next season. All right, so this is her book here. And this is a review of that book. It's a story of a mother who, after emancipation, seeks her children. So it's be interesting to read that one. So I'm not going to read all that one out. Just to say that this was interesting, the Timbuktu manuscripts. There's a great website all about it, and also the website's produced by the University of Cape Town. So it's great to know what African researchers are doing. So that's a really good link. Just say if there's anything you want to know more about any of these. This is David Alston's book. He won Scottish Book of the Year 2022 with Slaves and Highlanders. The histories of Scotland and the Caribbean, a very, very well respected book, and he's done an enormous amount of work. And he's also published an article about the Guyana Maroons, and that was we can watch that online. He gave a talk about that. Again, this is Richard Anderson, who I was speaking of earlier to Anne. He's written the book on the abolition of the slave trade, and that is available free, I think, as a PDF. So it's wonderful how universities are now and publishers are now expecting materials to be made available to the public, not to be kept in the ivory towers. Right, and here is at Yale University, the Glider Lehrman Centre for the Study of Slavery, Resistance and Abolition. And again, there's so much information you can find. Now we've got here that October is Black History Month, but I should really have had one saying that that February is Black History Month. But this was from Northampton University, the Global Ethnic Majority Staff Network. So it's great to have that name, I think, and not put down as minority. Now, Marcella's going to be speaking with us, so or spoke with us. That was great to hear from her last week as well. So that was a lovely thing. And I've requested to the National Archives that we look for support about engaging communities in local Black history research, and if local communities do find information when they look either country by country, Wales, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, rest of Ireland, then county by county and city by city across the UK. So I wrote to them, they've responded very positively, and we've got a speaker coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm not going to go through any more, I don't think, because that's covered a few of the things that we've been looking at in the last few weeks. Okay, so I'll thank Chief Thomas so much again. Thank you very much indeed. Garrick, thank you for your contributions. And June Elizabeth, it's great to have had you with us, and it's great to have Roland as well. And Simon, thank you very much indeed, but I think it's best if we wrap up the recording now. Thank you.